Hey guys, I'm your host Matt, and we're here to talk about the Dolphins' 23-15 victory over the Los Angeles Rams on the Matt Newton Football Show. The Dolphins were able to go to Los Angeles and defeat the Rams in a much needed win that they needed in order to keep their playoff hopes alive. And at this point, it's hard to say if the Dolphins will be playing for a playoff spot or if they'll be playing for pride. But the fact of the matter is, the Dolphins now have something to hope for as the season plays out. The Dolphins at the trade deadline didn't sell off any of their assets, so clearly the coaching staff and management believes that these group of players they brought together in the offseason is healthy and good enough to make a run, a push for the rest of the season. And we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed for the Dolphins, but at least for one more week, they can play inspired football knowing that it might pay off at the end of the season. Now, as far as this game, how it played out, it was really a good effort by the offense early on and the defense early on. At the end of the game, they got a little bit sloppy. The Dolphins offense turned the ball over way too many times, but the Dolphins defense kept bailing them out. As a matter of fact, in the first half of the game, the Dolphins committed 2 turnovers, an interception by Tua Tagovailoa and a fumble by Tua Tagovailoa, but the Dolphins defense only held the Rams to 3 points on those 2 turnovers, which is a big deal. Oftentimes you get a turnover, especially ones in your own territory, and it could lead to a touchdown for the other team. But the Dolphins defense was able to back up their offense and, say, hey, we got your back, and we're going to play the kind of complementary football that we need in order to win this game. As it stands, the Dolphins held the Rams to 5 field goals on the day. I think a couple of them were 50-yard field goals. So the Dolphins were able to keep the Rams out of the end zone, which is a first time for Matthew Stafford playing for the Los Angeles Rams. In 50 starts for the Rams, Matthew Stafford had never not scored a touchdown on offense. So this is a big deal to keep the Rams offense out of the end zone, especially when they have their guys back like Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. We know how impactful those guys can be. So the fact that the Dolphins were able to keep those guys out of the end zone is really a tremendous effort by them. The Dolphins defensive coordinator did a really good job of mixing up some of the blitz packages that they had on defense. And I thought that they did a good job of keeping Matthew Stafford off balance. And, what can I say about the defense? There's so many things that I can say about the defense, so many game balls to go around. But I think at the top of the list will probably have to be Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell is like he flew out to Los Angeles and found the fountain of youth. Because at 38 years old, in the first half of the game, I would say that Calais Campbell pretty much dominated that game for the Dolphins defense. He had 2 batted balls. He had a sack. He had a tackle for loss. He also was instrumental in one of the batted passes that he had turned into an interception by Anthony Edwards Jr. So the Dolphins really did a good job of playing really inspired football on defense, and Calais Campbell was really a big part of that. And, I don't want to overlook Zach Sealer because his return was just as important. The Dolphins were able to get pressure from Zach Sealer. He also batted a pass in the first quarter, and he was very active in the run defense. So getting those 2 guys back together on the field at the same time was really instrumental for this Dolphin defense. And, shout out to Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson had another sack in this game, his second sack of the season. He did a good job of putting an outside move on the left tackle and then swimming back inside and basically sacking Matthew Stafford, which was a big play when the Dolphins really needed it on 3rd down. So Chop Robinson is now making his impact felt on the defensive side of the ball. And he also had a tackle for a no gain with Kyren Williams in one of the run plays also in the 3rd quarter. So he was very active in the run defense, which, he's really a situational pass rusher, but, at the times when the Dolphins have to face a run play, like sometimes a team might run the ball on 3rd down and he has to stand up against the run and set the edge, Chop Robinson, at least for this game, was able to do that in very few opportunities. So that's a good thing to see. Also, Quentin Bell got in on the action. He also had a sack on the outside against the left tackle, coming on the right side of the Dolphins' defensive line, and he was able to bend and get around the left tackle and get the sack on Matthew Stafford. So, I mean, there are a lot of significant plays that happened throughout the course of the game. Kato Kohu was another guy who was active both in tackling and getting the guys on the ground. Even the commentators admitted during the game that the Dolphins defense did a great job tackling all season, and it was on full display today versus the Rams. You can see the Dolphins, how active they were. Kato Kohu was one of those guys. Jalen Ramsey was one of those guys. You can see their presence was being felt all over the field. Guys were getting tackled with no yards after the catch, especially the tight ends and running backs out the backfield. They got a lot of plays that they were able to tackle those guys for losses. And, I got the sense from watching the game that because Sean McVay's offense and Mike McDaniel's offense kind of come from the same tree, it seems as though both teams' defenses knew how to play the other team's offense. It's like they were prepared for a lot of the stuff that they did. So I found that gave the Dolphins a little bit of help in preparing for the Rams, because when I watched the Rams and some of their motions with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, I felt that those are some of the same things that the Dolphins would do with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So the offense looked a little bit familiar to me, and I think it did to the Dolphins defense as well. So I think that kind of helped them get the edge when it came to defending the Rams offense. And in addition to that, Dolphins were really good situationally. I think on the first 7 third downs, the Rams were 0 for 7 on third down conversions. Matthew Stafford threw a pick and was sacked twice on third down. So their efficiency was really good until very end of the game in the fourth quarter. The Dolphins were up by 2 scores. They gave up a couple of third downs when the game was pretty much, for the most part, out of reach. So the Dolphins were able to just basically play basic defense without giving up the big play or giving up a quick score. That was probably the agenda they were trying to accomplish. So, it was really good to see the Dolphins defense step up in a way that they did. I do still think that they were helped a little bit by knowing the other team's offense, but, you take your victories wherever you can. Now, as far as the Dolphins offense is concerned, they got started quickly on this game. They were able to score a touchdown on the first drive. Tua Tagovailoa was sharp. He made plays outside of the pocket, off script. He threw completions to Jalen Waddle, which helped to extend the drive. And then, Malik Washington was able to get the end around and score on the first drive of the game, which was a big play for him. And I believe that's his first offensive touchdown of his career for Miami. So that was great to see him getting involved. And he also got involved, I think, in some 3 wide receiver sets as well. Late in the game on the last drive, Tua completed a deep pass down the left side of the field to Malik Washington to pick up a third down. And that was a key play of the game because it helped the Dolphins get back into field goal position and helped them get a field goal, which put them up by 2 scores. As far as the running game is concerned, Devon Achane wasn't very efficient in this game. He had a couple of runs, but most of the times he got stuffed for no gain or tackled for losses. So the run game wasn't very efficient. But what was noteworthy was that it seemed as though Jalen Wright got more touches than Raheem Mostert did. As a matter of fact, I remember Raheem Mostert catching a couple of passes, I believe, one to convert a third down and another one not to convert a third down. But I don't think that Raheem Mostert was involved much in the running game. And maybe that may be a product of the fumbles that he had against the Colts and against the Cardinals, which led to, or it's part of the reason why they lost those games. Hard to blame Raheem on both of those games, but he was definitely a part of it, right? Those fumbles came at the least opportune times for it to happen, if there's ever an opportune time to have a fumble. So Jalen Wright seemed like he got the bulk of the carries. He spelled Devon Achane and got most of Raheem Mostert's carries. And, it could be a kind of passing of the torch at this point. Raheem is not getting any younger. He's 31 years old. I believe he'll be 32 next year. Jalen Wright obviously is a rookie. He has fresh legs. He's younger. And at least as of right now, he's better at securing the ball than Mostert has been in the last season or two. So, this could be a changing of the guard right in front of our eyes. So we have to pay attention to that. But overall, the running game wasn't very efficient. And whether it was Jalen Wright or whether it was Devon Achane, the Dolphins really couldn't get a lot of movement in the running game. And I thought it was a little bit suspicious that the Dolphins continued to run the ball on the right side when you have Austin Jackson out, you have Kendall Lamb playing in his spot. They didn't do a good enough job, I don't think, running the ball to the left of Teron Armstead's side. You would think that they would want to run the ball that direction because he's their best offensive lineman and their best run blocker. But the Dolphins repeatedly ran to the right side, and they continued to get stuff for no gain or stuff for losses. So it was kind of frustrating to watch that. But there were some times when Tua came up with some really clutch throws, especially in the fourth quarter, in which he made plays that extended drives and converted third downs to get them in the field goal range. But there were other times where Tua was very sloppy with the ball, didn't do a good enough job protecting it. There was one play where he threw an interception in the middle of the field, and if that wasn't a bad enough decision, it seemed like he went down to make the tackle, which you have to commend the effort, but then putting his head down in order to make the tackle. And I think on replay you can see that the defender who he tackled, his knee actually hit the back of Tua's helmet. So, clearly there was contact with the knee to Tua's back of his head. And, you never want to see that if you're a Dolphins fan. Obviously, everyone on the Dolphins sideline, they had to go talk to Tua and tell him something like, listen, you just can't do this. We understand how important it is to get that defender on the floor. And I know that Tua, having thrown the interception, feels responsible for getting that defender on the floor. But the key is Tua has to know he has to protect himself to keep him healthy, because without him, the Dolphins don't have a chance. So that's something I hope they address in the meeting rooms. I don't know how it could not have been addressed up until this point. It seems as though the Dolphins know what their season looks like without Tua in the starting lineup. I'm not sure if that's something that they want Tua doing, is making tackles on interceptions or turnovers. So, the Dolphins have to keep an eye on that. But outside of the turnovers that he made, Tua also had problems with just having good game awareness. There was one time when they were in field goal range, he took a really bad sack, 9 yards. It seemed like he was indecisive on what to do with the football. He looked kind of nervous, or indecisive is probably the right term. But either way, it seems as though he wasn't really in good position to make a good decision with the football. He might have been able to check it down. Yes, it was 3rd and 13. Someone remarked on Twitter, they told me, hey, buddy, it's 3rd and 13. What is he supposed to do? And my remark to him was that, sometimes a punt is better than a turnover. At least a punt, you get the defense to defend the entire length of the field. With a turnover, the defense has to defend a shorter field. So take the smart throw. You're winning 10-0. Let's not give the Rams easy points. Their offense hasn't done anything to the defense up until that point. So, play the field position game, give your defense a break, and not let them have to defend a short field. So that's my take on that. And then later on in the game, Tua took another bad sack. So it was 2 of them that he took, where he just held the ball, tried to spin out of the pocket, couldn't escape the rush, took a bad sack. Once he even fumbled the ball after taking one of those really wild-looking sacks. So, when Tua makes those kind of plays, it just leaves you scratching your head. The Dolphins designed their offense to really get the ball out of his hands. Even he, in his press conferences, he remarked in the preseason, when they asked him about the protection and the offensive line holding up, he was like, hey, brother, I get rid of the ball fast. So he's implying that he's not really concerned about the amount of time that the offensive line gives him, because he's getting rid of the ball anyway. But in this game, you saw too many occasions where Tua held on to the ball, and it looked like he held on way much longer than he should have, and it led to disastrous plays for the Dolphins offense. So Tua has to find a way to be better than that. The Dolphins can't have Tua making plays that can risk his health and also risk him turning over the ball. So somewhere, he wants to be aggressive. He wants to be able to contribute more than just being a pocket passer. Late in the game, we saw that. He was able to feel the pressure coming from his blind side, roll out to his right, which is against his strong arm, right? He's left-handed. So he was able to roll out to his right, buy time, and actually hit a deep pass to Jalen Waddle, which allowed them to convert a third down. The pass went for like 25 yards. So that was a big conversion, a very key, important part of the game. And for him to be able to spin out of the rush and complete that pass is something that you love to see from your quarterback, right? You like him to be dynamic and make plays off script when the original reads are not available to him, or if the pass rush is getting there faster than he probably expected to. This is what you want to see from your quarterback. But Tua also has to be smart and keep himself healthy if the Dolphins are to go anywhere. So the Dolphins got this much-needed victory. I'm very happy the way it turned out. They really didn't have to do much at the end of the game, just keep the Rams out of the end zone, which they did. And, the Rams took a field goal late just so they could get the onside kick and to keep it within one score. But the Dolphins, Duke Riley recovered the onside kick, so they were able to secure the win after that. Tua came back into the game and it went to victory position, the victory formation. So that's how the game ended. Mike McDaniel, I thought he did a good enough job sticking with the run, even though it hadn't been productive. They got, a few runs here and there. I thought he was still a little bit too pass heavy in the first half. In the first half, Tua was 9 of 15 for 60 yards. And the running game at that point the Dolphins had 12 carries for 51 yards. So the Dolphins' running game was actually producing more yards per attempt than passing the ball. But Mike McDaniel continued to try to throw the ball and get the passing game working. And it didn't really work well in the first half, but in the second half, he made an adjustment and started to get the ball more to Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu had maybe 4 targets in the second half, and 3 of those he caught, one for a big gain in which he had yards after the catch and got the ball all the way to the 1-yard line. So Jonnu Smith made his impact felt very late in the second half. And, honestly, I think it was a little bit too late, right? I think Jonnu should have been involved a little bit earlier in the game. So let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the section below, and I'll see you in the next video.